Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah.
I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me.
Storytelling. Storytelling's been around since the dawn of time. It's how we've communicated, how we've entertained, and how we've educated. And storytelling is going to be around for a lot longer. These days, podcasting is a way of telling stories, and that doesn't seem to be going away very quickly. Let's take a look at podcasting by the numbers. 400,000, that's the amount of podcasts being produced every year in the world, and that's increasing every day. 10 million, that's the number of Canadians who have listened to a podcast at one time or another. And 23%, that's the number of Atlantic Canadians that are listening to podcasts on a regular basis. But there are so many podcasts. I mentioned there are 400,000 out there, and the amount of podcasts that are available can be very confusing, especially if you want to find a podcast from the Atlantic Canadian region. So what Podcast Atlantic has done has created a directory of Atlantic Canadian produced podcasts and put them all in one place, and you can search them under province or by category. Right now, Podcast Atlantic is the only company to do this in the country. Podcast Atlantic is also a production company. What I do is I will produce your company or organization's podcast from A to Z with no problem, and we're also mobile, so we go where the client needs us to be. The revenue is collected through podcast production, website sponsorship, video production, and coaching. Our market is three-sided. First, we have the listeners. Those listeners that are looking for Atlantic Canadian podcasts, trying to find their next favorite niche podcast that'll get them through their walk or their drive to work. We also have the podcasters, who themselves need the listeners so that they can bring more ears to their demographic and entice sponsors and advertisers to help them out so that they can improve. And then we have the advertisers themselves who are looking for new ways to get their message out and to get their branding available. So I'm very happy that after only 6 months of being active, Podcast Atlantic now has 94 podcasts listed on the site, and there are a lot more to come. Podcast Atlantic is also pleased to be co-hosting the first podcast meetup here in Halifax on August the 25th. You're welcome to all join us. And we also are happy and pleased to announce that we have sponsors on board already. Web Savers was the first to come on board. We're very pleased to have a local web presence sponsor us, as well as Advocacy, the life coaching business. You've met Keith Gallahorn, he's the CEO, and I'm very pleased that recently he came on board as a sponsor, and I want to thank Keith. So, I've been a storyteller for a very long time. If you were a Halifax cable subscriber in the mid-1980s, you might recognize these two. I'm the tall one with the mustache and glasses. My job at Halifax Cable and then Eastlink TV was to help the community tell its stories, and I did that for over 27 years. So that's where I am today. My experience has brought me to this point where now I'm still able to help the community and organizations and companies tell their stories. My name is Michael Boyd. My company is Podcast Atlantic, and I want to tell your story. Thank you.